Good girl. Stay out of the beds, okay? Stay out of the beds. Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the Sunday garden question and answer video that I do on Sundays. You can ask questions, gardening questions down below, and I'll pick from those next week. I've answered lots of gardening questions on this channel over the years, and I try to vary them up at least a little bit. But if I get the same question tons of times, typically I'll re-answer that one. I'll re-answer that one occasionally, but again, there's a playlist on the channel for all these question and answer videos. I'll link it up in their corner. If you're watching on YouTube, you can go through that playlist. If you're interested, it's a lot of videos. It would probably take a long time to go through all those after 4 years of this. Let's see. This past week, I continued my detailed tour video of the landscape. I've shot the last two pieces, which one is right behind me and the other one is the vegetable garden. I think the vegetable garden will be up tomorrow. Edible plants mostly over there and dahlias, and then this little section right through here will be the last one. It's got some plants in it that you guys haven't seen before. I have a little nursery area back here that I hardly ever show, where the plants that haven't been planted yet sit. But I cleared out that area to shoot the plants that I don't think, like I say, there's several things over there you guys have not seen at this point, but that'll be on maybe Tuesday. I'll have that edited. I'm shooting a pretty cool week because I've got tomorrow morning I'm shooting a video at a neighbor's house, a garden that you guys haven't seen. Should be super interesting. They got a giant clerodendron, which is actually in my video that you guys will see. The last video from this tour video, I've got one on the other side of the fence over here. It's a noxious weed tree, but they have one that's limbed up. It's absolutely beautiful. And a cestrum parquet. I planted that cestrum parquet out in the front yard in a video maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. I don't remember at this point, but they've got a full-blown tree that's in full bloom. So you guys will see some interesting things in that landscape. And then middle of the week, I'm actually visiting Mr. Maple, and I'm doing one of those your favorite plant list with Matt and Tim over there. So that should be fun, and seeing their place. It is under construction because they're adding to their nursery. So, but anyway, hopefully that'll be interesting. So okay, anyway, let's get to some questions. One other thing real quick is I have put all of these detailed tour videos into a single playlist. If you want to go back and make sure that you've watched each of them. There was 3 from the front yard, and there are going to be 7 in the backyard, in the back garden here. I probably will never do that video again. It was a lot of work. There are a lot of varieties in this landscape, so this is probably a one-shot deal going through every single plant in the landscape. So, but they are in a playlist if you want to go and take a look at that. Okay. Let's get to some questions. The giveaway for the snips, I will announce the winners at the end of the video. Okay, somebody asked me about dividing ground covers in the heat. I answered a question last week that was you kind of got to know what you have, kind of a question that somebody asked. I don't remember what it was about, but it was about propagation, about whether I would plant something in the landscape in the first winter that I had just propagated. And it was, my answer was, you got to know the plant. It's the same thing about dividing ground covers in the heat in the middle of summer. If it was liriope, sure, I'd go ahead and divide it. I think you could probably dig liriope out, cut it into 4 pieces, leave it on the sidewalk, go have lunch and dinner and plant it the next morning. It would probably be fine. It would look crispy, but it would probably be fine. Same thing with daylilies, even probably hosta, honestly, unless you did those out in the full sun on the asphalt or something. You could probably get away with it. So it's partly knowing what you have as to whether or not I would divide them in the heat. If you don't, then probably in the cooler season, spring or fall or even winter if you're in the south, that's probably when I would do most of the dividing on things that, again, I didn't know how hardy they were. But there are things that you could definitely do in the heat that you wouldn't hurt them. Somebody asked if they should prune their incrediballs, hydrangeas, hydrangea arborescens that are flopping. If a plant is in danger of being broken by its own flowers, by the weight of its own flowers, I definitely prune them off. So that's a decision that you have to make when you're watching 2 hummingbirds fight right here. That's a decision you have to make. It can be a tough decision, but sometimes in the first year or two on some of these plants, it's best to take the flowers off if they're going to damage, potentially damage the plant. I had another crepe myrtle got broken apart because the flowers were so heavy, but the stems are still so thin. That's another one where, you know, as that thing's starting to open up and you can see the flowers starting to pull that thing down, you know, before you get a rain or something, you probably need to at least thin those flowers out. This crepe myrtle's already broken, so nothing, you know, not an answer for them at this point. But if you see something being weighted down by its own flowers, you need to go in there and thin it out, because a rain, additional water being added to that weight, you know, has the potential to break your plants. Hopefully a temporary thing, although I said in last week's video, a lot of breeding in these hydrangeas, we've made these giant inflorescences that every few years the plants are in jeopardy of damage if you get rains on them right at the peak of flowering. Somebody asked me about plastic grass, or, you know, astroturf, or, you know, I don't know, I didn't hardly ever see anybody in a residential setting using plastic grass until recently, and now I've seen, gosh, there's probably 4 or 5 that I could walk to right now that have plastic grass. My argument against plastic grass wouldn't have anything to do with, you know, you gotta keep it real. You know, I'm not that person. I don't judge anybody. I don't really care what anyone else does in their gardens, really. Outside of, you know, I see weed fabric exposed all over my neighborhood, and that plastic is breaking down. You know, where it's 10, 15 years old, that plastic breaks down. I question whether or not that grass, I don't care what kind of UV inhibitors they have in it or whatever. Has anybody ever seen any plastic that didn't age over some period of time? And I just wonder if it's going to release, you know, microplastics and, you know, and chemicals and whatever into the soil. I just have no idea. I mean, you can tell me that today it's stabilized and it's going to be fine. I just wonder if we're doing a disservice to people in the future covering the ground with plastic of any kind. You know, our oceans are full of microplastics, and I'm not gonna, you know, again, this would have zero to do with if I care whether you have weeds or a pristine lawn or a plastic lawn or any kind of, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me at all. It has nothing to do with being a judgy gardener. It's more questioning, just as a human to human, do we want to cover the earth in plastic? Just a question. Okay, so somebody asked me they can't find regular Nandina domestica. I've talked about Nandina domestica on this channel before. It is considered a noxious weed. It's actually was brought to the States hundreds of years, I mean a couple hundred years ago, and has been used as an ornamental plant in the Southeast. We have new varieties of Nandinas that don't seed themselves, and so in this landscape I've got lemon lime, I've got that Japanese variegated one over here. I can't remember what else I have. Oh, I have Obsession in my front container, and those don't seed themselves, so they're not, we don't have a problem with those, you know, being noxious weeds. But the old varieties are released into the woods. I can walk out here anywhere, I can find Nandinas. And so calling it a noxious weed and saying we shouldn't plant it is probably irrelevant, because it's already everywhere and it has been my entire life. So their question was that they can't find it anymore, and I think it's just because there's so many new improved varieties. There's even Nandina domestica compacta, so that's just the same as the old version, but just a more compact variety. And they want the old bamboo-looking, you know, Nandinas, and can't find them. Somebody's got to be growing them in the Southeast, but you're correct. I haven't seen them as well. I haven't been to a garden center in a long time where somebody had just straight Nandina domestica. They've all got the hybrids. One other interesting thing on Nandinas, because I'm going to talk about Nandinas right now, and then somebody's going to say, Nandinas kill birds. This is another internet is broken thing. And interestingly, I talked about this in a video since I moved here. I think I was over here by this fence with a big, giant, ugly pile behind me doing a question and answer video. I don't know why I would have picked that spot, but I answered this question about Nandinas being poisonous to birds. And if you search on the internet, are Nandinas poisonous to birds, you will get a return of 10,000 different pages of Nandinas killing birds. But it's every single one of those is the same exact story from Georgia. So it's the same birds being killed 10,000 times, and so every Nandina video I've ever have on this channel has Nandinas kill birds, don't plant Nandinas. Nandinas are everywhere. If Nandinas killed birds, there'd be no birds in the southeast. I think some birds got confused, ate them, and ate so many that they died, and so that's become one of those internet things. Yeah, Nandina domestica's everywhere. It's all over the woods. It's not going to matter if anybody else plants it or not, doesn't plant it. It's not killing all of the birds, and you're going to struggle to find it just because there's improved varieties. That's a long answer about a completely obnoxious plant. It is an invasive plant, so I'm not defending Nandina domestica. I'm just saying that the internet's broken. Let's see. Somebody asked me about watering strategy. Watering strategy for me depends on the time of year. I talked about in yesterday's August update video that my old established shrubs, the ones that have been in the ground for more than a year, year and a half, I don't water them much in the summertime because they go into kind of a summer dormancy. These plants aren't dumb. They weren't being watered before we came along. So, they have their winter dormancy, and then they grow like crazy in the spring. Most of them try to flower during that period of time and set some sort of seed or whatever they're trying to accomplish in life. And then during the summertime, most of them are smart enough to just kind of go holding for a different time of year, so I don't water that, that existing stuff. Your annuals and perennial things that are flowering during the summer, if you skip watering and you try to be lean on those, they're going to slow down on you and underperform. So, I want the salvia to keep blooming behind me, so I am monitoring these very closely, and of course containers I'm monitoring closely. But again, shrubs that have been in the ground for some period of time that I'm not trying to get them to bloom here in the middle of summer, I'm completely ignoring for the most part, unless it got dry for a long period of time. And then I would address everything all at once. And so I put drip irrigation down here. That drip irrigation is almost more for me if we go through a drought period, or if I'm going to leave town for 2 weeks and I don't want to ask this of somebody. This is a lot to ask of anybody to take care of something like this while I'm out of town. So the drip irrigation is here, where I'll water everything if I'm gone for 2 weeks, not because it necessarily needs water, but because I need to make sure it's covered. I need to make sure it looks good when I get back home. But again, I would say I'm 50-50 at this point. 50% of the stuff's been in the ground long enough where I probably won't need to water it this whole summer. The other 50% is either new enough or it's a flowering thing that I need to water. So hopefully that helps with that. Maybe slightly different camera angle now. The battery died. So if that was jarring in any way, that's the reason why. Somebody asked me about composting an entire bed before planting. That's what I did in this space. I actually got that soil cube compost and put a layer down on this entire landscape before I mulched. And that's kind of cheating the system. That's what I've been calling it. Because normally you would clear out a space, plant your plants, and then you would mulch. And then over the years of mulching, that mulch breaking down would form humus, and it would take a long time, to get a reasonably thick layer of humus that you would just kind of naturally have in the woods or down at the bottom of grasses. You go out to a grassy plain, there's humus down at the bottom of that, and you got grasses in various stages of breaking down. We call it thatch in our lawns, but in the out in nature, it's just layers of things breaking down. So putting down that compost first, I put down the compost, then I've done my planting. So a little bit of that compost has been incorporated as I've gone, not a tremendous amount. You don't need that much organic material mixed into the whole. And then mulch went over that. So basically I've just kind of jumped ahead a few years of what it would have taken for that mulch to do the same thing for me. So I recommend it. It's not inexpensive. This is a small enough landscape that I was able to afford that without breaking the bank. So if you were going to do a giant area, it might be kind of expensive to cover it in compost like I did this small area. The rooted cuttings, I talked about rooted cuttings last week and earlier in this video about if you don't know what you got after you root them, you would want to protect them through that first winter and not put them directly in the ground. Then they ask if they can just keep them on the front porch through the whole winter. I think you're going to have to protect them at some point. You don't want to let little small cells of plants freeze for a few days. Even the most cold hardy of things, if the entire root ball stays frozen for some period of time, you can't get water to the top of the plant. Keep in mind what most of the time plants are dying of in containers in the wintertime is the fact they just can't get water. The water in the container becomes ice and it becomes unavailable to the top of the plant, so it just desiccates. So that's what's going to happen to your rooted cuttings. Most of the winter they can probably sit on your front porch the day when it's above freezing, but if there's any chance that it's going to stay below freezing for a long enough period of time to freeze those cells solid, you need to protect them during that period of time and don't know where you live or how cold it gets. Let's see. Somebody asked, are all my budley or butterfly bushes special varieties? Because when they go to the garden center, all they see is small ones. Yeah, I go pretty much. All garden centers have gone to all the dwarfs, all the new special ones, Punkster and the ones that Denny Warner introduced, the proven winners ones and stuff. And I don't see as many of the larger growing butterfly bushes, but I think if you look long enough, you'll find more of the old-fashioned ones that get 6 and 8 feet tall. But you're correct. I mean, when I go places now and I see the butterfly bushes, it's almost all dwarfs. Dwarfs are great, but I think there's still space in most people's landscapes for ones that get 5 and 6 feet tall. I think that was a hummingbird that just went over my shoulder. Okay, somebody said they have ants in their pots and wondered why. I mean, ants are smart. Pots are easier to dig in and make a home in, and the water tends to be more regulated in a container. It's harder to dig in clay than it is potting soil. So we had the same problem in the nursery. In the nursery business, is that ants would make homes in our containers, and then when fire ants especially, we go down to pick up a container and put it in the truck, and the next thing you know, your arm is covered in fire ants. But yeah, you have ants in your pots because ants are smart, and they go for the easiest place that they can have a home. The other advantage of a container is it warms up earlier in the spring. It can be colder in the wintertime, but in the winter, I guarantee you they're leaving that pot and finding another place in the ground. Then they're looking for a pot during the spring because up above the ground, the soil gets warmer faster, so they can get to going earlier in the spring. But yeah, they're a pain in the butt in containers. Somebody asked me if I'm about winter sowing. There's a lot of videos every year now about people starting all their seeds in little plastic cups and jars and 2 liter plastic things and all kinds of stuff. To each his own. Any encouragement somebody's giving somebody to start seeds, if that's an easier technique that they've been using in the past, go for it. I'm always going to start my seeds in trays in the house under my light system because I like the uniformity that it gives me. I think that direct sowing in the ground or winter sowing in little plastic jugs and bottles and things like that, you're going to have some ups and downs in it year to year. Doesn't mean it's not a good technique, it just means it's not going to be the most consistent technique. And coming from a nursery business as I did, everything for me is about consistency. And if somebody comes and they want 10 of something to plant for a screen for a neighbor, they want all 10 of those things to look the same. And so that's the world that I came from. And so for me, the best consistency I get is doing my seeds in trays. I got a fly around my head. In trays under a light in the house. That's why I do it that way. It's just consistency. But again, if doing those winter sowing techniques or direct sowing or whatever the heck else you're seeing that gets you to do more of that kind of stuff, is great. That's the way I look at that. So I'll leave it there for this week. I'm sure there's more questions on this list of questions from last week, but there's like hundreds and hundreds of comments because of the giveaway on there. I didn't get through all of them. If I don't get a lot of questions this week, I'll go back and grab some more of those. That's always my backup plan if I have a week where I don't get a lot of questions. But I will go back and look at some more of those. The winners for the giveaway, I use a random comment picker. If you guys haven't been following my channel for a long time, there's a random comment picker that I can use for Instagram post, Facebook post, and YouTube post, and it just goes through everybody who's commented and picks a random winner. And using that, the winner on YouTube is Kimberly Barker, and the winner on Instagram is bhickfang. If you guys will send me an email to the horttube@gmail.com email address with your mailing information, I will mail the 2 pairs of snips out. Thank you guys for participating in the giveaway, participating in the channel, asking questions, so on and so forth. And again, keep asking them down below. Thanks for watching.